let's start. The theories of Mendel. That the first one, law of dominance. The first theory, law of dominance. Okay, so that we have completed monohybrid and dihybrid cross with all the applications. So that's why I don't think so it is going to be problematic for us. First of all, that law of dominance. Law of dominance. What is law of dominance? It is explained by the Mendel based upon the monohybrid cross. And after that, we applied so many, but based on the monohybrid cross, we can explain these. See here. Then we crossed a pure tall plant with a pure dwarf plant. When we crossed a pure tall plant with a pure dwarf plant, what happened? We obtain only tall plants in the F1 generation. In F1 generation, we obtain only tall plants. That means in the phenotypical expression, if you see a pure tall plant crossed with a pure dwarf plant, we got only tall plant. So in that, we can understand the tall plant, that allele, capital T, is the dominant one. It is dominant one. The tall one is the dominant and the dwarf allele is going to be recessive, and the theory called law of dominance, we can say like this. Whenever the two allelic forms of a character are crossed each other, whenever the two allelic forms of a character are crossed each other, whenever the two allelic forms of a character are crossed each other, we get only one of the form. Whenever the two allelic forms of a character, pure allelic forms of a character are crossed each other, we get only one form for expression. If a character are crossed each other, we get only one form. Only one form will come for expression. Only a form, a single form, only a single allele will come for expression. Okay, so the allele who expressed is called, dominant allele. Here we have to write the allele who expressed is called dominant allele. The allele who is expressed is called dominant allele. Dominant allele. The allele which is not expressed, the one that allelic form who is not expressed, it is called recessive allele. Recessive allele who is not expressed, called recessive allele. So the theory is law of dominance. So this is the first theory of Mendel, law of dominance. Whenever the two allelic forms of a character are crossed each other, only one of the allelic form will come for expression. The form who expressed it is called dominant allele. The form who is not expressed is called recessive allele. Mendel explained this based upon that monohybrid cross. Now let's move towards the law of segregation. The another theory, law of segregation. Law of segregation is also explained based upon the second theory, law of segregation. It is also explained based upon law of segregation, explained based upon the monohybrid cross itself. Let us continue the monohybrid cross. There you can understand that law of segregation. First of all, let us see what happened in the monohybrid cross. Thereafter, we analyze for law of segregation. Okay, so whenever in the parental generation, a pure tall plant crossed with a pure dwarf plant, what we obtain in the F1 generation, heterozygous tall, or all tall plants are appear. Okay, so that means there is no dwarf plant appearance. We called it as law of dominance. Okay, next, what next? Whenever we cross the F1 with F1, that means the heterozygous tall plant crossed with a heterozygous tall plant. In the F2 generation, we obtain the three tall plants.
One dwarf plant.
Obtain three tall plants and one dwarf plant. One dwarf plant is appeared. Okay, one dwarf plant is appeared. Three tall plants and one dwarf plant is appeared. Okay. So the dwarf plant appearance in the F2 generation, that raises some questions here. That what is F1 plants? F1 plants are tall plants, isn't it? The two F1 plant, what means that self-pollinated F1 plant is tall plant. So when let us see this in the form of okay. So let us see it is the same cross in garden. So in the parental generation, a tall plant crossed with a dwarf plant. We obtain in F1 generation, all the plants appeared in the F1 generation are tall plants. Then when the F1 plants are self-pollinated, when the F1 plants are self-pollinated, in F2 generation, we obtain three tall plants, that means 75% tall plants, and the one dwarf plant. We are not going to say 3 and 1. We are going to say 1,000 plants he did experiment. He got a result. Among them, 75%, nearly 750, 760 likewise. Tall plants are appeared. Okay, no problem with tall plant because whatever we cross, that is tall plant only. Then how does a dwarf plant is appeared? So even there is no tall plant. So even there is no tall plant in F1 generation, how do a dwarf plant appear? This is the question. For this question, whatever the answer we are giving, that is law of segregation. So that means first of all, we understand the question. Then after we'll answer that question with the help of law of segregation. So what is the question here? That there is no tall plant. There is no dwarf plant in F1 generation. F1 plant is tall plant. When F1 plants are self-pollinated, how do we get a dwarf plant? How do we get a dwarf plant? That's the question here. So for answer for that question is law of segregation. Answer for that particular question is law of segregation. So what is segregation? Segregation means separation, isn't it? The segregation means separation. Here we have to talk about the expression of the gamete. Expression of the gamete. Okay, so we are talking that after segregation, how does the gametes are going to be expressed over? In general, when we are doing the cross, what we did, we are taken some gametes, isn't it? That gametes, this is capital T, small t. So we are taken some gametes. This is capital T, small t, capital T, small t. Okay, so I am bringing here that let us see that I'll erase everything here. Directly we do the F1 plant, F1 cross with F1. That means a tall plant is self-pollinated with tall plant. What's the question we raised over? In that F2 generation along with the tall plant. So even tall plants are 75%, we obtain a dwarf plant. So how does a dwarf plant appear? That for that we are answering the question. During the formation of gametes, the gametes are segregated. Segregated. That means separated. That means you have to understand this in the form of cell division. Meiosis. During meiosis, this gamete containing chromosomes, capital T, reach to one side and small t reach to another side. I am showing anaphase. Here, they get separated like this. That's what you call segregation. Okay, so segregation. During the formation of gamete, segregation occurs. So that is segregation. Okay, how does segregation helpful for that? Let us see. Let us see. Wait. So segregation. How does the segregation helpful for the formation of dwarf plant in F2 generation? So they are not present in F1 generation. How does it is getting formed? So let us see here. So I am drawing this. Is the thing you have to remember while reading the textbook, while reading the different materials, while reading the various areas. You will be struggle with that particular sentences here. Wherever you go, you have to remember the bigger box I draw. So that I am asking you now, can we say the expression of this particular plant which I am showing in the box? What is the expression of this particular allele, capital T? What is the expression? The expression of this allele.
Tall.
Tall, very good. Okay, so that expression of this allele is tall. What is the expression of this allele?
Dwarf.
No. No expression. There is no expression. Here the problem will come where most people will get confused because of this only. No expression. That's why this plant is tall plant, isn't it or not? Yes, that's why we call this plant is a tall plant. That means a dwarf allele, when tall allele is there, along with the tall allele, if a dwarf allele is present, it doesn't come for expression. That is the first thing you have to remember. Okay. When does it will come for expression? When does it will come for expression? That we have to see. So when it is coming for expression. So what we said in this particular area, the when we say the F1 plant, when we say the F1 plant, the F1 plant is not having the expression of tall. That we have to remember. Sorry, dwarf. So tall plant is expressed, but there is no expression of the dwarf allele. Tall allele is expressed. When does they express? Now I am asking the same question. The capital T, small t. That means during meiosis, during anaphase, when that particular gametes are segregated, when they are separated. Now I am asking the same question now. What is the expression of this gamete? That capital T I am showing here. What is the expression of this gamete? What is the expression of this gamete? We can say tall gamete, isn't it? This is called tall gamete. Next, what is the expression of the small t? What is the expression of the small t? Okay, that's good. What is the expression of the small t? That means small t gamete.
Dwarf.
Dwarf.
Dwarf gamete.
Yeah, very good. Dwarf gamete. So, if you understand the difference of the above box, this box, if you understand the difference of this box and these two, you can understand law of segregation. Simply what we are saying, during the formation of gametes, the two alleles are getting segregated. During the formation of gametes, the two alleles are segregated. The segregation of alleles result the expression of tall gamete. As usual, they are expressing from the beginning. Now, the dwarf gamete also came for expression, and that particular dwarf gamete who came for expression, their combination makes over the expressed dwarf, small t can make the formation of dwarf plant. That means the total story you have to understand during the formation of gametes in F1 generation. Whenever the tall and dwarf allele are segregated, are separated, when they are segregated, when they are separated, then the dwarf came for expression, dwarf gamete came for expression, and their combination made the formation of dwarf plant in the F2 generation. First of all, we asked a question. What's the question? So there is no F1, there is no dwarf plant in the F1 generation. How do we get a dwarf plant in F2 generation? We asked a question and answer for that. During the F1, then that self-pollination, during the formation of gametes during the F1 generation, that when the gametes are segregated, when the gametes are separated, that allelic expression came to for dwarf also, the dwarf allele also expressed. That's simply what we can say. We can compare when can a student will express. I mean, I'm saying when can a student can do mess in the classroom when he is separated from his teacher. That means capital T compared with teacher. Small t, student. That can he make noise in front of the teacher? No. So when he segregated, so he show his originality. That's what I am saying here. So you just go through in that particular format, you can understand much better. Okay, you can understand much better. So that's what we are talking about. That's what we are saying about that law of segregation. That is said to be law of segregation. Okay.